In the past, when bilingual families had a child who struggled with language learning, they were often told to switch to speaking English only. Sadly, some families are still told to do this today. There are many children with DLD who are also bilingual, so please, if you speak another language at home, do not stop speaking your language to your child, even if they are in an English language school. It actually could be harmful to a child in a bilingual family if a parent suddenly stops speaking a language to their child, especially if it was a primary language that the child was exposed to. So let's say you predominantly spoke Mandarin at home, and then your child started English language school and was diagnosed with DLD after you shared that they were also not developing typically learning Mandarin. Even in that case, please don't stop speaking Mandarin at home, because that could cause a whole bunch of issues with one language not being fully established and then that language being taken away. That is really hard for the brain. It can make it even more difficult to learn the next language. So we want to continue facilitating the primary language development, or the home language, because that can actually be really beneficial. And contrary to a lot of awful advice that has been given to families, taking it away can actually be very detrimental. Another reason to continue using the home language is because you don't want your child who has DLD and is already at risk of challenges with social interaction due to their DLD to then be cut off from important family relationships because there's not a common language between them. For example, if your child isn't able to communicate with grandma and grandpa anymore because they're no longer being exposed to their home language, that can cause many issues with cultural and racial identity. If suddenly the language that you have as your heritage language is no longer spoken to you, that can have many emotional consequences, as well as identity challenges and parts of the culture that you cannot fully relate to. If your child grasps a certain concept in their home language, it can make it that much easier for them to learn it in their school language as well, because there's a lot of transference between languages. Dr. Fred Genesee is a renowned language acquisition expert from McGill University in Montreal. We'll end this sub-lesson with the following quote found in his publication entitled, "A Short Guide to Raising Children Bilingually." It is commonly thought that children with language impairment should only learn one language because learning two exceeds their language learning capacity and could result in even greater impairments and delays. We do not have as much research on children with language impairment who are raised bilingually as we would like. However, the research evidence that we do have suggests that children with language impairment can learn and use two languages fluently despite their impairment. They exhibit language impairments in both languages, but their impairments are of the same nature and magnitude as those of monolingual children with impairment. At the same time, they develop proficiency in two languages. At present, there is no scientific evidence to suggest that children with language impairment should be limited to only one language on the grounds that this will facilitate their language learning and avoid language difficulties. Raising children with language impairment bilingually is especially important in families and communities where knowing two languages is important, and where not knowing one of the languages would restrict the child's interactions with other family members or with members of their community. I'd encourage you to read this publication entirely and also check out some of Dr. Genesee's other work if you have questions about raising your child bilingually.